right, welcome once again to this meeting. Thank you. It's good to see a lot of known faces here and also some relatively unknown. This is a special opportunity for us as Nigerians who are based in the United States, and also a Nigerian who flew in because of this program last night. But before we proceed, I would like to invite Reverend Yakubu Bakwash to please lead us in prayer again.
Shall we pray? Gracious Lord, we can never be thankful enough for the gift of life and the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for our brothers and sisters. Thank you for everybody that is able to make it here. Lord, we pray that you would help us in our dialogue, in our look as we look into the future. Thank you for brothers and sisters that are able to join from far away from Nigeria. Lord, we thank you for the safety. We ask that those who are on their way coming, please, Lord, make it possible for them to be part of this great occasion. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Yeah, thank you, Frank Gavney, for this opportunity to collaborate and partner together on this issue regarding the persecuted Christians. And also, Didi, you are such an amazing woman who has really helped us to put this thing together. I don't know what to say than to say God bless you. We just have 1 hour, and we would like to maximize that because we are talking about the destiny of over 200 million people, and we are determined to make sure we make good use of this opportunity to advance the concerns issues bordering on Christians and other human rights issues in Nigeria. Also, first of all, I'm Stephen Enada. I work with International Committee on Nigeria advocating within DC policy space and Europe. We try as much as possible to engage on this Nigeria dynamics from different areas, and I even have a lot of friends here. If I begin to mention from Dr. Lindsay to ICC to my friend Dominic Bruto, and also my boss here, who is Faith McDonough, and all of you, it's amazing. There is a man here also, Dr. Ayeni, Reverend Sam Ayeni, and also we have one of our major contributor, Dr. Shayo Ajiboye, who actually is the president of Mission Africa International. So we are not going to waste, he will speak about what Mission Africa International does. And on that note, we'll have opportunity. He has some folks here who are going to also share their experience in engaging with issues that affect Nigeria. So we have Mr. Tony Nadi, who is an attorney who flew from Nigeria here last night to engage also. Mr. Tony, thank you for making that sacrifice. He represents Lower Niger Congress. And if you want to know much about the concerns of the Igbo in the eastern bloc of Nigeria, he's somebody who has been advocating, but his advocacy actually cuts across. We are talking about Nigeria, and we are talking about human flourishing for all. But when we seem to have this decimation of a population, it's a big concern for all of us. And thank you, our friends in the United States, who actually under devotion to humanity and to human flourishing, you are here to support, and we greatly appreciate that. So we'll be having short time to to make presentation, but before I leave this podium and call Dr. Shayo to introduce this program properly, I would like to tell you that International Committee on Nigeria in the last 2 weeks have mobilized some Nigerians together in Abuja on citizen engagement and multi-faith dialogue. So we're able to inaugurate in collaboration with RF Roundtable. Greg Mitchell was in Nigeria, and we started Nigeria Roundtable. So at least we are the first who actually has taken the ministerial out of the United States, at least to Nigeria. So we've started RF Roundtable in Nigeria. So we thank God for that opportunity. And that's just to tell you that we have some great, huge concern to make sure we are able to effect some kind of positive change in Nigeria where human lives will be respected, will not be violated. So, and also, we, under admonition and leadership of Congressman Frank Wolf, we have advanced even this call for special envoy to Nigeria and Lake Chad region, which Save the Persecuted Christians actually is playing a prominent role there. And we thank God for Frank and Didi and Faith and ICC also for putting effort together to make sure this happens. And also, Dr. Lindsay, thank you, you and your wife. You've been a huge support and pillar to this. So on this note, I would like to bring Dr. Shayo Ajiboye as he coordinates. And then I know we are not going to be having more than 7 minutes of presentation. And you know, Faith McDonald will be also speaking on why Special Envoy is important. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. It's a privilege to stand in this place, and it's worth repeating that Frank, Dede, you have done the miraculous. You know, to put something like this together, it looks easy, unless you know what goes on behind the backstage. And Dede has just been an agent of God in these regards. So thank you once again. And we thank all our friends who are here. And we are grateful that you are here. Mission Africa International. Before I go on, Frank, as a Frank, Stephen Enada, the executive director of ICON, who is becoming the dean of advocacy for Nigerian issues in Washington, D.C. Please, can you help me give a clap to Stephen? You know, we honor you, and you know that that's not a light statement. You work tirelessly to make these things happen, and we are grateful to God for you. Thank you, sir. And you know, I don't want to go on and on because so many people I would like to talk about. Pastor Frank Fagbami, who is the leader of one of the leaders of African Faith-Based Leadership Council, who came to spend time with us. Pastor Fumi Falano. Obilano, I'm sorry. What am I doing? Pastor Fumi Obilano, who is also here from Philadelphia, traveled all the way from Philadelphia, who will be speaking in a few minutes. I would like to go straight to why we are here. And we are here because of, for me, the children of Nigeria and the widows and the orphans. Mission Africa International in the U.S. is an advocacy operation. In Nigeria, we live among those who people talk about I have children that are now mine whose parents have been shot before their very eyes. I have children that are now mine whose parents were not just shot, but their mother was raped right before them. I've been in villages that have been pulled down. I'm talking about somebody goes into a home and pull down the pillars so that you cannot rebuild it. I've been in areas where not only would the Islamists kill the people and drive them out, they will bring bulldozer to remove the foundation of the churches so that in one season you will not be able to locate that there was a church there. It's difficult to explain some of this things, just because we say persecution. What does that mean? Until you touch the children. I built schools for children that the government refused to educate. We build hospitals for people that their people refuse to take care of. I'm sorry. For us, it's real life. It's not theory. I'm sorry. We don't do it for just Christian children. We do it for Fulani children too. We love them. Right now we're building a school in a Fulani village. And we are grateful that we can do that. That's so little that we can do. I'm not going to take a lot of your time, but you know, when we talk about the special envoy team, it's not a theory. I don't have any reason to be fighting for this. I'm safe in America. My children are safe here. My wife is here. I have a good job. Why am I troubling myself? Why am I doing what I'm doing? It's because Jesus said, if you do it for the least of this, you've done it for me. There's a need for a special envoy. It's a critical need because of the complicity of those that ought to be speaking for the people that are being persecuted. So when the person that is supposed to save me is the person that is killing me, what can I do? My life is hopeless. If you're a Christian child in some of the states of Nigeria, and I can mention names, once your name is Joshua, you are not allowed to come to primary school. If your name is Joshua, if your name is John, that's enough. You can't be registered in school. We have a situation where once you're a Christian, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are. If you even get employed, we talk about economic persecution. We talk about educational persecution. We talk about terror as an agency for persecution. And we talk about those different facets of persecution. You know, I mean, can you imagine growing up not being able to dream because you know that your dream is going nowhere? I have a friend who is a Fulani girl. We've been friends for nearly 30 years. She calls her children my sons. She says, Shayo, your sons. And I call her mother my mother. So they are Fulani Christians, for those who don't know. Their village was attacked by terrorists. And please don't use the term herdsmen for pastoralist conflict. If there is a conflict, that means two of us are fighting, right? Don't use that term again. It's totally incorrect. The terrorists came into their village. His grandfather's village is our surname, is the name of the village. They came, chased everybody out, and after some time things quieted down, and the people were going to move back, and the government facilitated the Muslims to move back. And the Christians said, okay, we too want to move back. And they said, your village does not have gates. You know the meaning of that? We do not recognize that you exist. So, double jeopardy. I don't want to take a lot of your time. This next week, I'm going back to Nigeria. And I'm going to again be among my beloved people. I'm going to travel right across the places that people talk about. So pray for us for protection. But we believe God wants us to do it. Without much ado, I would like to... Do you want to coordinate this, or should I go on? Please come and help me. I'm a mess right now.
Yeah. Thank you, because of our time. Thank you. Yeah, please come. It's okay. Let's see.
We want Pastor Fumi Obilano to come first. She's the senior pastor of Redeemed Christian Church of God, Living Springs in Philadelphia. She's an amazing woman, a lawyer by profession, a very senior lawyer who chose to become a pastor and has been pastoring since 1998 and is the head of the one church she started has become 40 churches. You know, and she's the mother of them all. She's working not just in the United States of America, but globally in East Africa, in the Caribbean. Pastor Fum is passionate about women issues and other issues, you know. But, you know, a lot of this terrorism thing is a woman issue, you know. You see, because the man can get up and go, where's the woman going to leave her children? Pastor Fumi.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here this afternoon. And thank you, Pastor Shayo, for the introduction. When we talk about persecution, when we talk about violence anywhere, usually the most vulnerable are the women and the children. And in the Nigerian situation especially, where in the northern part of the country, women have always been disenfranchised, where they have not been exposed to a lot of education. It's especially pathetic when we now have the compounded problem of terrorism, and it's against Christians. Women become women and children become the greatest victims, and it can be very heart-rending. And as Pastor Shayo said, it's especially a problem in Nigeria because those who are supposed to protect, we don't know whose side they're on. From things that are spoken all around, we don't know if the government is complicit with what is going on. Even when funding is provided to protect or to fight the terrorists, we don't know whether the money is being diverted to the terrorists. The arms that are being bought are being diverted to the terrorists. The strategic and intelligence information that is being gathered is being diverted. So we don't know who we are fighting. So I want to make a special plea this afternoon. The issue of a special envoy to Nigeria is absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Nigeria is very, very critical to Africa and to the rest of the world. 1 in every African is a Nigerian. And if the Nigerian problem explodes, the whole world is going to have a monumental problem. All the other places that we've been talking about will be child's play. So as Christians, I want to solicit for support for Nigeria. And also for the strategically for the US, it is critical that something be done, and something be done right away. Otherwise, we have a population of over 200 million people. If things explode in Nigeria, where will 200 million people go? So I want to also make a special appeal this afternoon. We need all the help that we can get. And for those of you who have already started working with us, a very, very big thank you. But there's work to be done. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. But I believe that with the effort of everyone and with prayer and believing God, that something will be done. But we do need a special envoy because we need that leverage to compel the Nigerian government to do what it's supposed to do and not just feed us as praise to these terrorists who are pouring into Nigeria in great numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We want to make this just snappy. Thank you, Pastor Mrs. Obilano. We are very grateful. I know you have a lot more to say, but the most important thing is we cannot deal with this business as usual. It's urgent. And somebody who is in the midst of a crucible, who is working these issues every day, whether from the indigenous people of the southeast of Nigeria, the Niger Delta people, or from the national perspective, is somebody is our friend, barrister Tony Nande. He flew from Nigeria purposefully because of this. And this is important. And I'll just make way for him to make his presentation. What we're trying to do is, when each one of them have made their each one of us have made our presentation, then we will give room for questions and hope to be able to really strike why it is absolutely necessary now that the U.S. have mercy on my children and give us a special envoy. Barrister Nadi.
Good afternoon, all. Like I did say earlier, Tony Nadi is my name. I happen to be a lawyer with a specialty in jurisprudence, the area of law that deals with how constitutions are made. And the reason I had to come at so short a notice, you know, when the letter came to me, is the urgency of what we're talking about. And when I saw the theme you chose, Nigeria at breaking point, it seemed, it struck me as people who now know that there's something grievous about to happen. In fact, already happening. Only that if it goes beyond where it is now, everybody everywhere will pay a price. And what we see in the Middle East will become a child's play. The angle from which I was asked to, come to shed some light is the source of that problem. The source of that problem. You know, I talked about diagnosis that will lead to prescription, that could then lead to treatment that will work. If you fail with the diagnosis, your prescription is going to be wrong, and the patient will die. The patient here is the sick Nigeria. And our concern is less for Nigeria than for Nigerians. It's a world of difference. If you mix up the two, you're going to end up killing the people you thought you were going to save. Having listened to some of the things that have been said even on this segment, what we have in our hand is a Nigeria that has become a rogue state. And the global Islamic movement has targeted it to make it their operational base for what they are doing globally, having been challenged in the Middle East. And it's not something that began last night. It's something that has come a long way. And they've, at this time, succeeded in establishing a passage from where they had to relocate to where they target. And on the last page of the paper you have, you will see the map of Nigeria. The size of the problem is this, that to all this Atlantic Ocean, to the bottom here, on all these sides are ungoverned spaces. Chad, Niger Republic, Northern Mali, and most of what you call Northern Cameroon are just a satellite playground for what the one you call Nigeria. But that Nigeria collapsed in 1966 when the constitutions that brought them together, were overturned. And a rogue federal government emerged, operated by a caliphate. And when you hear caliphate, the Islam they put on it is to confuse those who do not know what it is all about. It's a political movement that grabs sovereign spaces and actually target the whole global, how much of it they can get. But they always require some launching, some operational basis in which they won't be challenged. And what's going on there is that they have found, having hijacked that federation, the sovereign space, housing that federation that collapsed in 1966, becoming a federal government. I'm sure you hear about federal government of Nigeria all the time. Becoming a federal government in a situation where the federation had collapsed, but operating a unitary system in which they're in charge of everybody's bedroom. They've seized all the assets of the owners of the place, and the only thing remaining now, and that's where the urgency of it comes in. The only thing remaining now is that they are eliminating what could become future claims of the indigenous peoples of the area by cleansing them off. They've already finished the task in this upper part that they've imposed Sharia. We have 12 states that simultaneously impose Sharia in a supposedly secular federation. Having done that, they also found their way to Government House. The Boko Haram you hear was just their mechanism to bulldoze their way to Government House. The day after the election, they went into the mission for which they got to that Government House. And that mission was to overrun the rest of this territory. And where they are now, if you look closely to the map, you will see the middle belt. You hear about Benue, Plateau, and all of that. They just moving upon the communities, removing them, and bringing their kinsmen, because the Fulani, incidentally, do not have they are an itinerant population. They're nomads, all the way from Gambia to Senegal, all of the West African, and they are bringing, as they sack one community, they bring, they already allotted the whole place up to Port Harcourt to, Fulani of one country or the other. The people they call herdsmen are the advanced team, the ones who have come, like, about the promised land. When they got there, there were giants occupying the place, and they had to be removed for those who came to take their inheritance. That's what they're doing now. The owners of the various places are being removed for those who say it is their inheritance. They actually tell us to our faces that the place was given to them by Allah, and they will do everything to take every part of it. They've succeeded in taking the assets of all the sites. You hear about Niger Delta and the agitation for their oil and gas. All those things have been sequestered long time ago from the point of that collapse of the constitutional arrangements. And I call it rogue federal government because if you have a federation, imagine the United States, in which the constitution that secures everybody is overthrown by maybe not even any big state. California is big enough. Imagine if it were Long Island or some Maine in the northeast here that overthrows the constitution of the United States and becomes the owner of the whole of California, the oil assets of Texas, and all of that, and manages to impose a constitution in which you can no longer generate electricity for yourself, you can no longer police yourself, you can no longer elect who will govern you, because they have to do everything from the center. And in that kind of a situation, having secured that ownership permanently by brigandage, they now want to remove future claims by removing the human beings. It's ethnic cleansing that is called, and I'm sure we had a Danjuma shout. So if we do not realize that that's what's going on, we probably will be saying, let's go save Nigeria. It's not Nigeria that's into Nigeria died a long time ago. It's the Nigerians trapped in that space that are in trouble. And what can be done for them now is to recognize the reality of the situation and the implication for the global community. Because if they go beyond where they are now, they say they're going to election. You know what that election for? They want to get another 4 years to sweep through what is left into the Atlantic waterfront here. And what has happened on ground there is that somehow we've managed, in the organization I'm secretary to, we've managed to wake up the owners of the rest of the place to say, if we do nothing, these guys have been decimating piecemeal. It will come to you at some point. And when it comes, nobody's going to come to your aid. In a situation where if anybody's in doubt as to who is the source of the terror, the governor in Kaduna State, you remember they won on the Christmas Eve, they imposed curfew. People were not to move around. And everybody thought, well, at least for the period of the curfew, we could relax in our village. These people came from nowhere and sacked, they killed over 890-something people on the eve of Christmas, people who were getting ready to just celebrate the next day. And the governor, his response to all of that was to say, that they went, that the ones killing were Fulani from outside Nigeria. and that he had, as governor, gone to give them money in 14 different countries to plead with them to stop coming to kill people. And if you interpret it further, you will see that they know where the killers come from. There is their responsibility, ordinarily, to protect the people who are in their domain. They are not doing that, and they take money from the treasury to go to give to those people. And it's simply the reason he said what he said. He told them that Fulani now in charge. That means you don't have to do any more of this. We're already here. Take it easy. We'll find a way to deal with the rest of it. They are taking over the place. And if they do, in no time, the whole of these territories we're pointing at, the whole of that Chad, bigger than Nigeria in landmass. Niger, bigger than Nigeria in landmass. Northern Mali, bigger than Nigeria. If those three alone, get sucked in, because that's what's going to happen, you have a monster operating from it, because the rest of West Africa will just collapse into, is it Benin Republic or Togo? Which of them? They will suck that in, and they will have in their hand the proceeds of the oil and gas that is sold there to finance their global operations. And anybody who will be coming here to fight with them, to try to remove them, like the fight had been going on in the Middle East. Middle East is desert. You can see from 1 million miles what you want to do. But if that comes up here, and we're very close to getting to that, if they escape with going to this election that will renew and reinforce that constitution they have put in place. They call it democracy. I'm sure we all know about the apartheid South Africa. The closest to what is going on in that place is that apartheid, in which a minority stranger population became the owner of the entire space to the exclusion of the owners. And they have succeeded in keeping it almost 20 years. They want this one more election since they've got their man who has the capacity to do the evil that is required to finish the business. That's where they're going. And what we have done is to get all these ones to say, this constitution is not of us. The one we made, you overthrew. For 50 years, we've been asking that we discuss. You say we can no longer discuss. You go pull arms from everywhere, seize power in government house, pretend it's all a democracy, killing everybody, and now we won't go with you any further. The help that the global community can give to the situation is to listen, to understand what the problem is, and to go to nip it in the bud, because if it grows any larger than it is, now like you do with cancer, what we've done is offers a quarantine plan to that situation. If that quarantine is not in place in good time, the global community will pay a very high price, and that is avoidable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nadi. Please, I will try to obstruct even the flow of this meeting, and please, I beg for your indulgence. Before Faith will speak, and I will try to at least take some words from Pastor Ayeni and Yakubu, and Faith is going to speak from Sudan experience why Special Envoy to Nigeria is important. But I have here somebody we refer to as godfather of Roundtable, Greg Mitchell. I will put you on the spot. He just came from Nigeria, so please can you just come here please and share with us briefly in just 2 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Greg Mitchell, and I chair the International Religious Freedom Roundtable here in Washington, D.C. And with the help of Stephen and International Committee on Nigeria, I went over to Nigeria last week. I was in Abuja, and on the 10th of January, we set up an International Religious Freedom Roundtable in Nigeria. And I went over there with Nathan Weininger of the 21st Century Wilberforce Initiative, and with ICON, we actually, I think there was about 36 people there. at this first meeting to set up a Religious Freedom Roundtable. And real quick, what it is, it's an informal coalition of representatives of all the different faith groups. And at the table at this first meeting in Nigeria, in Abuja, we had Shia Muslim, Sunni Muslims, and Christians, and a free thinker. And that was just the first meeting, and about 36 of them. They were all very excited to set this up, and it's going to be an ongoing multi-faith roundtable to discuss issues of concern to all the different faith communities and to come up with multi-faith solutions and to weigh in with the government and try to get the government to be true to the Constitution, which guarantees religious freedom for everyone. So it was a very successful start and very high enthusiasm, and they're going to meet monthly. That was just the first one. They're going to meet monthly, and hopefully I'll be back. Hopefully some of them, they'll be invited. The next ministerial to advance religious freedom here in Washington is going to be in July. We'll invite some of the participants from the roundtable in Nigeria, and they can be part of this global movement. We also went up to Jos and talked to a lot of people up in Jos after the roundtable meeting on the 10th. And you're talking about urging the government here to appoint a special envoy for Nigeria and Lake Chad region. I put that question to people in Jos. I was talking to Nigerians, and they convinced me, it's even more. I came back from Nigeria thinking it's even more important that we have this special envoy than I did when I went over there. I mean, I signed on to the letter. We did a multi-faith letter in support of the special envoy, but there was some people at the State Department don't want to do it. I got a little pushback, and I didn't know how important it was. But I went to Nigeria last week, and I talked to people on the ground there, living there, and they told me how important it was, and they were emphatic. They said we really need it. And just a real quick story. I also heard what I learned over there when President Trump met with President Buhari here, and there were several people here that urged the president to bring up the issue of religious violence in Nigeria with the Nigerian president, and he did. He brought it up, and we were told when we were in Jos talking to people, they said there was an immediate and marked reduction in violence. The government responded right away to Trump bringing it up and urging them to do something about it. So President Trump's words had an impact, reduced violence and saved lives. So we need more of that. And so they were also then telling me, telling us that a special envoy would help, that a special envoy on the ground there as a representative of the president and this government would help reduce violence even more and would help save lives even more, and we'd get the solutions we need for a stable and peaceful Nigeria, which would be great for the entire region and for the entire world. So those are my observations, just the highlights. But I'm really glad that I went, and I definitely look forward to going back. And I really want to see that Religious Freedom Roundtable in Nigeria grow and succeed. And we've been doing it for over 8 years here in Washington, D.C., and there's several of the participants are here in the room. We want to grow it in Nigeria. And so with your help, I think we can do that, and it'll succeed. And I think that we need to get policymakers there to listen to the conversation. Get this, we were there for 7 hours. The roundtable participants here know that our meetings are two or 2.5 hours. We were there for 7 hours. That's how committed they were to this and how excited they were and how hopeful they are that this will bring peace to Nigeria and bring all the faith communities together and get them working together. And just as an example of the Shia Muslims, their leader is in prison. The Sunni Muslims put the Shia Muslim leader in prison. They were asking for help from the Sunni Muslims and the Christians who were in the room, asking for help, to get the government to release, their leader, and there was a commitment to do that. So there's hope. Hopefully we're going to play a role in solving the problems in Nigeria. So thank you all for your commitment to this, and thank you, Frank, thank you, Faith, thank you, Stephen, and everyone else here, and Dee Dee, thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. Greg is talking about going back. I was trying to ask Frank Greg, that can we trade off? You stay in Nigeria, I stay here. Well, thank you so much for that. Please, before Faith will come, Pastor Ayeni, please can you come forward, and then please can you come, because he is from community. I was in Plateau when my friend's wife, who was pregnant in one of the crises, was disemboweled. And the gory picture is still in my memory. I can't erase it. And anytime I want to, like, oh, Stephen, why are you so concerned? I just remember these victims. Justice is needed. So please, I'll give you just, please, you can juggle. You can say something. You can say something. Then we'll bring Faith, and then you will take the question. Please, we have limited time because we must close by 4.
Yeah, once again, my name is Pastor Ayeni. I came down from New Jersey today, and I want to thank the organizers of this program. I want to thank ICON and Mission Africa International, Pastor Shayo, Pastors, Mr. Steve Enada. I've been working on Nigerian issues for quite a while. I've had the privilege to work with Congressman Chris Smith when the issue of Boko Haram started in Nigeria. I remember when he was in Nigeria, we had an Interface TV interview. And during that interview, I was telling the whole world that if Boko Haram issues were not dealt with then, it's going to be a global mess. And not many weeks from that, there was a terrorist attack in Kenya. And immediately, the U.S. government designated Boko Haram as a foreign-based terrorist organization. Now, coming back to the purpose of this gathering on Christian persecution in Nigeria, I want to encourage all of us to support the bill on a special envoy to Nigeria. And I believe one of the things they're going to address in the country is the reenactment and holding the government accountable for enforcing the constitution of the country. On the surface, Nigeria is supposed to be a secular country, but in the same country you have 12 states that are practicing Sharia law. That should not be allowed at all. And now election is coming. It's very appalling that nobody is asking the right questions to the people that are running for office. What is your view on the constitution of Nigeria? And that should be asked to those people. And then number two, I believe enforcing religious freedom, just like what Mr. Greg Mitchell was talking about, will diminish the power of these Islamic oppressors and the Muslim pressure groups. It will send a word to the teachers and the practices of these radical teachings of Islam. So I want to encourage us not to give us the fight. The time is now, not tomorrow. Thank you so much.
It was Paul, the apostle, who says, "For me to live is Christ, to die is gain." In 2001, I became one of the first ministers to be abducted by Islamic militants. Just flashback 2001 religious crisis in Jos. It left over 1,000 people dead. For 10 good days, no single person was going in and out. In those 10 good days, I was abducted for 5 days. No one knows exactly where I was. At the point, I was the senior chaplain at Ekwa Evangel Hospital, which is now called Bingham University Teaching Hospital, right in downtown Jos. Why was I abducted? My area of specialty is West African Islam. Tony, he is an attorney. He has well articulated what I have studied as a theologian over 10 years in seminary. Thank you, brother. Second abduction. In 2002, I took the same hospital for outreach, what we call medical outreach, to Yelwan Shandam. June 26, 2002, second religious crisis, outbreak in Yelwa. I was still abducted. For 5 days, no one knows where I was. But in both of the abduction, God rescued me. Remember, my name is Yakubu, and it's more closely associated to Hausa Arabic. Actually, I was supposed to be called Jacob, but I used the name Yakubu. That name gives me favor, even within those who abducted me. Please, we need an envoy. If I am alive today, it's because of the grace of God. Others may not be able to have this opportunity. Please, please. Thank you, Greg, for coming. Thank you.
Well, our time is running very fast, but you will remember that a few years ago, Sudan was all the rage. The Janjaweeds and all the, you don't even want to remember it. But from this same city, help came through God. And the key players that made that possible are still here. So I would like to ask Faith McDonald, thank you for what you did with Sudan. Thank you. Please, can we just praise God? Let's have church.
Oh, gee. Okay. Well, I am Faith McDonald from the Institute on Religion and Democracy, where I direct the International Religious Liberty Program. But, Stephen, you're wrong. I was not going to talk about how the Sudan experience fits in with this. I was going to talk about my Nigeria experience, because I am an Anglican of the Anglican Church of Nigeria under Archbishop Ben Kwashi. So I have a very strong connection to Nigeria because of that. I did work on getting the first Sudan special envoy, former Senator John Danforth, and he did a great job. He did what needed to be done. He saved an entire ethnicity of people, the people of the Nuba Mountains, because the Nuba Mountains of Sudan were about ready to be wiped out by the Islamic Khartoum regime, and Danforth put in place what he called the benchmarks, that if Sudan was serious about making peace, then they needed to follow certain benchmarks, and one was stop eradicating the people of the Nuba Mountains, and it worked. So that's all I'm going to say about the Sudan issue, but I really just want to talk about Nigeria, because, back... What the pastor was talking about, I remember that. I've been working on Nigeria for about 22 years. I brought former Archbishop Josiah to meet, Firon, to meet Senator Rick Santorum years ago when things were happening in Kaduna. This is not a new subject, and my Nigerian brothers and sisters know that, but maybe not everybody knows how far back this goes. This goes back beyond Boko Haram. This goes back beyond weaponized Fulani. I mean, there were Fulani with weapons, but not the kind of weapons they have today. But I just pulled some stuff out of my files. I just want to tell you a few little things. October 21st, 1999, Islamic law to be introduced in northern Nigerian state, and that was Zamfara state. And they promised it won't apply to the Christians, the governor said. And Pastor Sunday Mabong, president of the Nigerian Christian Association, said the introduction of Islamic law is worrying and could lead to a dangerous period in Nigeria's history. Well, that was prophetic. In 2000, sectarian bloodshed in Nigeria, and just as my brother said, let's get rid of these crazy phrases about sectarian and clashes between two groups and all this false moral equivalence. It's not a sectarian bloodshed. It's a targeted trying to exterminate the Christians in Nigeria, especially then. News has reached the Anglican Communion Office that the Bishop of Kaduna is literally confined to his home with his family and 6 other bishops. They were on their way to synod to elect a new primate of Nigeria. So that must have been when Nicholas Oko was being, or no, maybe Akinola. But anyway, that's Anglican stuff. But this has been going on. 2001, January 11. This was when the radical people in the city reacted to a lunar eclipse and decided, oh, it's the Christians' fault. It's the infidels' fault. We're going to wipe out the Christians. That was the kind of thing that was happening in 2001. 2002, Nigeria riots. Scores of Christians have been slaughtered and hundreds injured. This was because of the Miss World contest. Remember that? Yeah. They burned down the offices of This Day newspaper. So, you know, the time a few years ago when they burned down a European newspaper for having cartoons about Muhammad, that was no new thing. This had happened in Nigeria years before. We worked on trying to get Boko Haram made into a foreign terrorist organization for 4 years. So when Greg talks about the State Department being resistant to the idea of a special envoy, they were resistant to the idea of making Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization. Just listen to this. Even the day that they did designate it, which as my brother said, had to do with the Kenyan attack, but it was the day when wonderful Pastor Adamu was testifying before Chris Smith, actually, who had been shot in the face by Boko Haram and left for dead, and suddenly the State Department changed their mind. But even that day when they testified, when Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield, testified, she said, Boko Haram's activities call our attention not just to violence, but also to poverty and inequality in Nigeria. It is true that there is poverty and inequality in Nigeria, I said. This is from my article. But none of it touches Boko Haram. They carried out their latest slaughter in 2 armored personnel cars and 7 double cabin pickups, according to Punch magazine. And they had their own caterer going with them wherever they were killing people. So poverty and inequality have nothing to do with why Boko Haram does what it does. And in fact, Congressman Chris Smith said to that's an insult to poor people all over the globe, because just because you're poor doesn't mean you attack other people. So it's been a long time that we've needed a special envoy for Nigeria, and as part of Save the Persecuted Christians Coalition, and in my job as the International Religious Liberty Program Director at IRD, I'm going to do all I can to get that to happen. Just going back even further, this was following independence from Great Britain in 1960. Sir Amadou Bello said, the new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather, Uthman Dan Fodio. Now, you talked about the estate of the caliphate. That's what they're saying. This is our property, and these people who are on it need to be wiped out. We must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. We use the minorities in the north as willing tools and the south as a conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future. So, you know, Westerners, we tend to have very short memories, but this was declared then, and they're still working towards it, just as the Islamic Khartoum regime in Sudan is working towards a caliphate. Caliphate is nothing to laugh at, whether it be from ISIS, from Boko Haram, from the Khartoum regime, from Al-Shabaab, any of those groups. So we need a special envoy, and we need the right special envoy. We need a special envoy who is not morally equivalent, who doesn't talk about clashes between Muslims and Christians, who understands the truth and will work to help everyone in Nigeria. And just before I leave, this is a calendar that we did about atrocities that took place by Boko Haram, our working group on Nigeria, in 2013. By the providence of God, the days and dates of that year correspond with the ones of this year. So you could use it if you wanted as a calendar this year. And just to remember to pray for Nigeria. I have a bunch of them, so if you want one, just come see me later. Thanks. God bless.
Thank you. Because of our time and we want to close out please, if you have questions, maybe sideline we can take that. Is that correct? So you can give a closing.
It's correct. Okay, my closing remarks are very simple. Our time is up. We are grateful to everyone, but there's somebody who is not here that I must make a special mention of. He's our mentor. He's the one that is pushing us whenever he sees me. Shaya, what are you doing? Go get them. I'm talking about Congressman Frank Wolf. Can you just give And I say that sincerely and heartily. Thank you, Frank Wolf. I pray this dream comes to pass. Thank you, everybody. God bless you.